Folks, it's a very sad day for Mark Carney in Ottawa. It's something terribly tragic has happened, and we all need to pay our respects. But Mark Carney could lose. Will lose his fake majority government. Guilbeault could quit caucus as soon as this week, government sources tell CTV News. Wow. Wow. So it's official. Mark Carney will no longer have his fake majority government. Well, hey, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. But that's not all we're covering today, because we have a couple other stories in the bucket for you today. Secondly, Mark Carney may be out of his grief that he will no longer have a majority government. We can only guess what's going through his mind at the moment. But he is tripling the tax on streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, you name it. He is now tripling the tax on streaming services, maybe so that he can wipe his tears with your dollar bills. And lastly, Conservatives are putting forward a motion in the House of Commons very, very soon to put an end to gas tax in Canada. So stay tuned for all the stories, because we got three very interesting reports in your Tuesday DominionWatch report. Stay tuned. But before we get into all of that, if you love this country and, like I do, you firmly believe that God has his hand over this nation, feel free to hit that subscribe button and like the video. Now, let's get into our first story of your Tuesday DominionWatch report. So, according to insider government sources at CTV News, Stephen Guilbeault is considering retiring from Mark Carney's Liberal government and sitting as an independent. What does this mean? Now, you might be asking yourself, why is this? Well, if you haven't been following along with the channel, which why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you be? Subscribe already. Jeez. We have been covering the story for the last couple of days. Essentially, Mark Carney has made a deal, you may have heard of it, with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith that includes an oil pipeline. Ignoring the fact that this pipeline is not going to be built start being built until September of 2027, which is absolutely ludicrous, a ludicrous timeline for pipeline construction that should have been completed already months ago. But that aside, but besides that, we do at the end of the day need a pipeline. We need more than one pipeline. We need a bunch of pipelines to provide economic relief for our people. We are just not in a position as a country to chase environmentalist dreams and ideals. We are so far past that. We need many, many pipelines immediately, because they are the fastest and most effective way to provide economic relief for our people. That being said, though, there's a lot of environmentalists, 14 of them to be exact, that are unhappy in Mark Carney's Liberal cabinet and they're starting to feel a little queasy. They're starting to feel a little uncomfortable in their gut about staying in Mark Carney's Liberal cabinet. Apparently, Guilbeault would be sitting as an independent if he were to leave. I don't know why he doesn't just sit as a Green. They need all the seats they can get. They've been a party for 20 years and they've maxed at like 3, I think, 6 years ago, and now they only have 1. They need all the help they can get. Maybe he can provide a little bit of support to them. Who knows? But according to what I'm reading here off of, he would sit as an independent if he left Mark Carney's Liberal cabinet. But it would be really funny for him to sit as an independent. It'd be interesting to see how he votes on certain bills. But it would be good, though, because see, the thing is about the other 2 Liberal MPs that are leaving is that they're going to be their ridings will enter a by-election once they leave, and at least one of them will probably be a Liberal victory. But if they sat as an independent, which I understand why they can't, because the reason that they're leaving, one of them is Nate Erskine-Smith. He's leaving to pursue Ontario Liberal politics. I guess that's his passion, and his passion to become leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. And the other is going to be an ambassador to the European Union. So I guess I understand why they can't sit as an independent, but it would be really funny if they did, because that means that Carney will have permanently lost his artificial majority, which he still could, because like I said, there are 14 other MPs that are as unhappy as Stephen Guilbeault about this deal with Alberta. And there are lots of reasons to be unhappy about it. Let me be very clear. One of many being that for whatever reason, there's not going to be shovels on the ground and boots on the ground until September of next year, for God knows why. But they're unhappy because, well, it's a pipeline, and to environmentalists, pipelines are not good. But this is what I've been talking about for the last months now, and a lot of political commentators like myself have been talking about. It's that Mark Carney cannot balance the needs of the kind of business liberal side of his party and the needs of the environmentalist side of his party. You just can't do it. It is too broad of a coalition of voters. You got to pick one or the other. The reason why Justin Trudeau had a very efficient vote, much more efficient vote than Carney, a much more efficient vote than Paul Martin, much more efficient vote than Jean Chrétien, one of the most efficient votes in the country, is that he knew exactly who to appeal to, and he appealed to them hard. Very, very hard. And he got their vote in insane numbers in very small pockets. So even though he didn't get a lot of popular support, he was able to win election after election. And in a way, I have to give him credit because it's very smart. But Mark Carney has instead a very broad coalition of support from all over the place. But what that ends up doing, because he hasn't picked a niche, he hasn't picked a specific set of policies, it's all going to start falling apart. We saw this with Brian Mulroney in the 80s. He couldn't keep the Quebecers happy. He couldn't keep the West happy at the same time, and he lost them both. And that resulted in the Progressive Conservatives getting 2 seats in the 1993 election. And all it takes is a couple of years, because Brian Mulroney won, I think, 154 seats in the 1988 election. And then 5 years later, actually not even a couple of years after that, he was polling at 14%, which is insane. And then a couple of years after that, in 1993, his predecessor, Kim Campbell, did not have nearly enough time to repair the situation, although in the time that she did have, she definitely did not help the situation. She won 2 seats and then obviously resigned, as anyone in their right mind would, following such an embarrassing loss. I mean, honestly, it's remarkable that they didn't disband the Progressive Conservative Party immediately following that election result. I feel like that would be probably the smartest decision, but hey, here we are. And Mark Carney is in a very similar situation, where he cannot balance the 2 completely polar opposite wings of his party, and it doesn't help that he has taken on full-fledged conservatives like Marilyn Gladu and offered her via backroom deals, which she has now opened up to. Play the clip.
Take me. And so one day I was talking to Evan Solomon. He's the minister in charge of federal economic development.
Okay.
And they had cut the funding for the riding by 50%. And they doubled the size of the riding. And I said, Evan, here's the great work that they've done with Community Futures. They've cut their funding. Do you think, you could look at, with your team, is there any way they could extend their funding? And he said, sure. When are you coming over? And I looked at him and I laughed. I said, well, I didn't get a call and I don't expect I will.
Right.
And he said, would you like a call?
So now you have not just environmentalists, not just fighting the business liberals, the pro-pipeline liberals / centrists, if those even exist anymore, centrists. I feel like everyone considers themselves a centrist, really, when you break it down. But anyway, that aside, you don't just have those 2 groups opposing anymore. Now you have actual conservatives, like social conservatives, pro-life conservatives, anti-LGBT conservatives in his cabinet now. And you got to start to wonder, what does caucus meetings look like? I would pay good money to tune in to one of his caucus meetings via Zoom, via whatever, because that has to be an interesting conversation. That has to be a very, very interesting conversation, and I would love to hear it. I would have the popcorn out, with a Fruitopia, strawberry Fruitopia, just snacking away, just watching that, because that has to be the most interesting thing. I can't think of a more interesting thing conversation wise than a Liberal Party caucus meeting under Mark Carney in 2026. And I've always said that the downfall of Mark Carney, because every prime minister has a downfall, whether you like him or not, every prime minister has a downfall. It's just part of Canadian parliamentary politics. The downfall of Mark Carney will be that he can't mend the conflict between the two wings of his party, and both of them will kind of tear away from him, maybe slowly, maybe violently. And it looks on the course we're on, it looks like it's going to be pretty violent. It already is pretty violent in terms of the tearing away. But that will be the downfall of Mark Carney. That will be how he loses the election that he will inevitably lose, because every prime minister has to lose an election or resign because they're so unpopular. And whatever happens in Mark Carney's case, it'll be, I guarantee you, it will be because of this exact situation, this exact conflict. I don't know. I have a gut feeling telling me that this situation is probably the beginning of a series of events that are going to be the unraveling of Mark Carney over the next few months. But who knows? Even if he rebounds from the situation and then goes on for maybe another couple of years, whether or not he resigns tomorrow or resigns 10 years down the line, God, please let there not be 10 years of Mark Carney. That would be... that's all I want. Regardless of whenever he resigns or loses an election, it will be, I guarantee you, it will be because of this exact factor. It will be because he could not balance the wings of his party. But that's not the only story we're covering today, because Carney, in his grief, his mind has been clouded by just how tragic this all is. And he has decided to take it out on the people of his country and steal your money once again. He has decided to triple the tax on streaming services. So Netflix, Hulu, Bojo, Mojo, Jojo, whatever streaming services you love to binge on, your drug of choice, he has decided to triple the tax on them. And more specifically, not just triple the tax, but in Canada, streaming companies that make movies, make some kind of content, have to subsidize a certain amount of their revenue to support Canadian content. So it was 5%, and recently it was moved up to 15%. Just very recently, just a couple of days ago, I believe. And of course, companies are not going to eat the cost of that. So they're in Canada now, in this country now, they're going to make streaming far more expensive, because obviously they're not going to just eat the cost. They're going to be running more ads, more higher prices for monthly streaming. It sounds insane. Here's an idea. If the content's good, then there will be a financial incentive to make it. And you won't need subsidies. And that's really the liberal philosophy, isn't it? Right? That's really the Trudeau philosophy, now the Carney philosophy. Instead of creating the incentives financially for people to want to invest their time and their money here in Canada, we're just going to pour a bunch of taxpayer dollars into it for lackluster results. And sure, it'll suck. The end product will suck, but at least we get a good headline out of it. But not only this is the interesting part, and the part I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, is that it's not. Mark Carney's not just facing pressure to undo this from the Conservatives because of the cost of living crisis. No. But he's actually been facing pressure from the Americans on this, because the U.S. administration has pinned this down as one of many unfair trade practices that the Liberal government is indulging in, and therefore the implication being one of many reasons why it is difficult for Mark Carney to get a trade deal when so many other countries have been able to get deals done now. So this is no longer just about cost of living, upping taxes on streaming, although that is a terrible thing. But now it is directly affecting the Canada-US trade relationship, and it has been for some time. We may not always like the results of free market capitalism. I know I certainly don't. But the fact is that it's a significantly better, more sensible process than handing out taxpayer dollars to different content sources, which will inevitably result in garbage. Here's an idea. If Canadian content is in such a gutter that you need to triple the subsidy from consumers, ultimately, who's going to pay for it, to be able to create more Canadian content, then here's a thought. Maybe Canadian content just isn't that good. And maybe, just maybe, you need to figure out why it's not good, make it better, and then once it's good, people, actually smart business people, will have a reason to invest in this country. But no, they've made it completely impossible for anyone with a brain to want to invest their time and their money here in Canada. But the last story of the day is that finally, the last story of the day is that the Conservatives are putting forward a motion soon, maybe even today, I'm not sure, depending on when you're seeing this, to put an end to all taxes on gas in this country. Play the clip.
Canadians need a break. They need a break from Liberal misery, from the high Liberal taxes and the high cost of living that the Liberals have created for Canadians. The Prime Minister, who's completely out of touch, has said that affordability is the best it's ever been in an entire decade, but the numbers don't lie. 2.2 million Canadians are going to a food bank in a single month. Insolvencies are on the rise. More and more people and more households are becoming food insecure. So as the Liberal track record goes, the Liberals have only introduced half measures. They're only taking a third of the tax off for a third of the year when it comes to fuel taxes. That's why Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre in today's Opposition Day motion are calling for all federal fuel taxes to be removed for the rest of the year. This would save Canadian families 25 cents per litre, and it would save a total of $1,200 for Canadian families just this year.
So this is something that the Conservatives have been fighting for some time. I'm sure everyone has been aware of the very recent spike in gas prices. Wow, I'm shocked. A spike in gas prices under a Liberal government. Couldn't have seen it coming. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is that the Liberal government is blaming the war in the Middle East, both the Israel-Palestine conflict and the United States' war with Iran. They're blaming these conflicts for the spike in oil prices. And they are having an impact in oil prices worldwide. The problem is that there's always been wars in the Middle East. The problem is that 15, 20 years ago, there was also a war in the Middle East. And oil prices here in Canada were significantly lower, not just than they are now, but also one of the lowest in the world, because our oil is significantly more taxed than anywhere else in the world. And the Conservative motion soon is that might have already gone through by the time you're watching this, is suggesting remove all taxes for the year, remove them entirely for the year, to give Canadians a real, proper economic relief on something. And these are the kinds of ideas I want to see more from the Conservatives. I guarantee you this motion will not pass in the House of Commons. It just won't. Because Mark Carney's government, how can I put this nicely, are full of evil people who care far more about raking in tax dollars than caring about anything else. But that being said, these are the kinds of ideas that get attention. They get attention from the press, get attention from the media, get attention from people. These are the kinds of ideas I want to see more of from the Conservative Party of Canada. These are bold, they're ambitious, they're practical. These are the kinds of ideas we need to see more of from the Conservative Party. So I, for one, am very happy to see them putting forward newer, fresher, bolder ideas that still remain practical at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, what matters most is how you're going to pay for it. You know, despite the crazy world out there, I still have hope, because my hope is rooted in God, not of the things of this world. And I firmly believe as long as we strive to do our part, God's going to work everything out just fine for us. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, do all the things you got to do. You want to do. You don't have to do any of it. Do all the things you want to do. I'll catch you guys in the next video. God bless you guys. Have a good day. Bye now.